Okay, so here's what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about type 1 and type 2 errors. Type 1 error. This is when you reject the null hypothesis. So you say, okay, we found out the mean is bad. And the mean was actually true. Whoops. So that's called a type 1 error. It happens because we rejected some percentage. Technically, we still have some kind of percent to actually get those values. And since we have a percent chance of actually getting those values, that's when it happens. So it doesn't happen very often. How high you make your alpha level depends on how often you have a type 1 error. So if your alpha level is at 5%, you'll make a type 1 error 5% of the time. If your alpha level is at 0.01, you'll make it 1% of the time where you get a value in there by chance. So alpha level affects your type 1 error because that is your percent chance of, hey, I thought the null hypothesis was false, but it turns out it was actually true. Here's what we call a type 2 error. A type 2 error is this situation. Let's say that we do not reject the null hypothesis. We go, nope, the null hypothesis, we got a value and it worked out, and we said that we don't reject it. Like, you're right, you did the calculations right, and they actually did the calculations wrong. So it kind of looks like this in picture form. So what happens is, let's say the actual mean, let's say we would reject things over here. So anything past there we would reject. Let's say the actual mean of this thing is right here. So then this would get its own kind of normal curve. And if, for its normal curve, we got to these values, we wouldn't have rejected the hypothesis because it fell in here, but the actual mean was over here, so we were wrong. And so anything that was in this area of the actual normal curve that was kind of shifted would count as true when we tested it, but the null hypothesis would be false. We're going to call this a power. That's the power of your statistic, is how likely you are of making a type 2 error. So it's that whole area that kind of fits inside of here. The second video that I have posted today does a really good job of explaining how to calculate both of these. We actually don't need to be able to calculate them today. We're just going to kind of talk about them today. So you're going to talk about, oh, like I make a type 1 error is the same value as my significance level, because it's the same spot of things that I would fail. So it's the same as percent chance that it would fail. The power, which you won't need to calculate today, will just tell you the likelihood of you making a type 2 error. So if the power is like 30%, you would have a 30% chance of making a type 2 error where you would actually not reject the null hypothesis when it is false. And they'll go through and talk about which one's worse in which situations. I pulled most of the questions today from the book. So if you get stuck on any of these problems, please, please, please ask. The other thing that's kind of nice is the book will have a couple answers, like that you'll see this problem later on there. So if you get stuck, you can show the answers and kind of read through and see what the computer would put. I wouldn't mind that, especially because some of the wording of how you would like interpret these things or how you would state these things, you might have a good conceptual idea, but you might want to check of exactly how to state these things. The other good place to look for some of this is because for my videos, I give you kind of a recap of the chapter. If you really are confused about some of these things, the book does a better job of going more in depth and explaining it. Again, I also posted this video right here. This person does an extremely good job of how you calculate these two different errors. Now, we won't need to calculate them today. Everything will be given to us, but sometimes I think it's very, very helpful if you're like, I don't quite get this process, to see how it's calculated. And if you see how it's calculated, sometimes it makes kind of more sense. So that's what the other video is for. You only probably need to watch it if you're getting confused on this type 1 error and this type 2 error stuff from more of a calculation standpoint, or you're curious on how they actually calculate these things. Okay, so just try the different problems like normal, and I'll just go through and kind of grade the different questions. Thanks.